In this video, we'll uncover 20 rare and discontinued sandwiches that once delighted American taste buds, from small-town diner classics to bold fast food experiments. Each vanished from menus, leaving behind nostalgia for simpler times, baby boomer memories, and the vibrant flavors of mid-20th century America's golden era. Number 1. The original Tri-County meatloaf sandwich. This sandwich first appeared in small-town diners during the 1930s, when the Great Depression forced families to stretch every ingredient. It combined leftover meatloaf slices, a thick tomato gravy, and toasted white bread. Rural communities in old America often featured it on blue plate specials, and baby boomers recall seeing it advertised in black and white newspaper clippings. Over time, big city tastes evolved, shifting attention to faster, more convenient offerings. By the 1970s, as America underwent cultural changes, this homemade classic disappeared from most menus. People who grew up in that golden age still remember the comforting taste of tangy sauce melding with lightly crisp bread. TV commercials never really showcased it, but local radio ads in the 1940s highlighted its budget-friendly appeal. Today, modern home cooks occasionally try to replicate the recipe, yet the authentic Tri-County version, served with battered fries and a vintage rock and roll soundtrack, no longer exists at the majority of diners that thrived in mid-20th century America. Number 2. The McDonald's Hula Burger. Introduced during the 1960s when the fast food chain was experimenting with alternatives to its main beef lineup, the Hula Burger was a curious creation of grilled pineapple and cheese on a bun. McDonald's hoped to capture the market of people abstaining from meat on certain days. Baby boomers remember the short-lived TV spots that played before old Hollywood films, in drive-in theaters and local channels. The sandwich's sweet and savory flavor never caught on, and it vanished before reaching the popularity of the Filet-O-Fish. Nostalgia enthusiasts who collect old McDonald's memorabilia and watch vintage American commercials still talk about it. Some say the pineapple glaze had a unique tang, reminiscent of 1960s retro dinners. Though the Hula Burger didn't last, it remains a symbolic reminder of that era's willingness to take culinary risks. This piece of 20th century fast food history now lingers only in collector photo albums and obscure references among Gen X fast food fans. Number 3. The Hardee's Roast Beef and Cheese. In the 1970s and 1980s, this was one of the chain's most memorable sandwiches, rivaling other big names in the fast food roast beef game. It used freshly sliced roast beef stacked high on a steamed bun, topped with a melted cheese sauce that had a sharp tang. Old commercials from that era showed smiling families taking road trips in massive station wagons, stopping at Hardee's for a hearty meal. During America's baby boomer years, the sandwich was seen as a slightly more premium option. Over time, changing corporate ownership, menu overhauls, and new competition caused Hardee's to retire this staple. By the 1990s, the item had disappeared from most locations, leaving only secondhand stories of its special sauce and the nostalgia of that golden age. Some Gen Xers still recall sneaking in after a late-night rock and roll gig, craving that distinctive roast beef flavor. Now it's one of the lost legends that hasn't been successfully replicated on the modern menu. Number 4. Howard Johnson's Fried Clam Roll. Throughout mid-century America, Howard Johnson's was a roadside icon, especially during the 1940s and 1950s. Families on summer vacations remember the bright orange roofs and the wide variety of comfort foods. One of their standout sandwiches was the fried clam roll, featuring crispy strips of clam in a soft roll, drizzled with a tangy tartar-like dressing. The chain's popularity peaked during the baby boomer years, with kids begging parents to stop for a quick bite during cross-country drives. In the 1960s and 1970s, old commercials portrayed carefree families enjoying all-American nostalgia in convertible cars, set to cheery jingles. As the decades progressed and the brand dwindled, the fried clam roll became more elusive, vanishing alongside the once ubiquitous roadside motels. Vintage menu collectors and retro enthusiasts still look for references to this sandwich in old print ads and black and white film clips. The taste remains a memory for those who lived through the golden era of easygoing travel. Number 5. The Dunkin' Donuts croissant sandwich of the 1970s. Before the chain focused heavily on coffee beverages, Dunkin' Donuts toyed with serving simple breakfast sandwiches on flaky croissants, sometimes filled with ham, egg, and cheese. The croissant, introduced partly due to French-inspired culinary trends in the 1970s, gave the sandwich a buttery crispness. Old America saw the rise of more cosmopolitan tastes, and baby boomers recall picking up a croissant sandwich along with their standard donut box. However, the product suffered inconsistent quality control, especially in smaller franchise locations that struggled with pastry storage. Dunkin' Donuts pivoted towards sweet treats and streamlined breakfast combos in later decades, quietly discontinuing this version. Ads from that time rarely showcased the sandwich, focusing instead on donuts and perky coffee commercials reminiscent of oldies radio. Now, references appear only in fragmented internet discussions among Gen Xers who remember the special limited-time promotions. This item has become a footnote in breakfast sandwich history, overshadowed by the more widespread bagel-based options that arrived in the 1990s. Number 6, the KFC Colonel's Snacker. Launched in the mid-2000s but conceptually inspired by KFC's earlier handheld sandwiches of the 1980s, the Colonel's Snacker boasted a crispy chicken strip, peppery mayo, and lettuce on a soft sesame bun. It was touted as a quick, affordable bite for people nostalgic for simpler, fast food menus. While not as vintage as 1930s or 1940s fare, it's still a sandwich that abruptly disappeared, leaving behind fans who recall childhood drives through suburban America. Fast food historians see a parallel to older KFC sandwiches that baby boomers encountered when the brand first expanded. Online forums compile old commercials that referenced snacking on the go, reminiscent of the 1970s push for drive-through convenience. Eventually, menu changes replaced it with other chicken sliders, erasing the Colonel's Snacker from American nostalgia. Today, collectors of retro KFC packaging sometimes discover promotional posters in forgotten storage rooms. The fleeting popularity of this small sandwich underscores how quickly fast food trends can shift, just like the ephemeral rock and roll hits that fade from memory. Number 7, the White Castle Seafood Sandwich. During the 1960s and 1970s, White Castle tried numerous limited-time creations to keep its menu fresh. Among them was a simple fried fish or shrimp patty served on the chain's signature slider bun. Old commercials from that golden age teased a maritime taste right in the heartland of America, appealing to baby boomers who wanted variety beyond the classic beef slider. It initially garnered attention for being unique among White Castle's main offerings, but supply chain challenges and shifting consumer preferences led to its demise. By the 1980s, the seafood sandwich quietly vanished, overshadowed by the brand's continued success with its signature onion-laden burgers. Traces of its existence can be found in 20th Century Magazine ads featuring cartoon seagulls inviting customers to take a bite of the ocean. Gen X nostalgia seekers occasionally mention it as a childhood memory, often recalling how different it tasted from modern fish sandwiches. Despite renewed interest in vintage items, White Castle hasn't brought it back, making it a niche piece of retro fast food lore. Number 8, the McDonald's Arch Deluxe. Though introduced in 1996, the Arch Deluxe carried an air of sophistication, reminiscent of old Hollywood marketing strategies, aiming to attract adult audiences with a fancy burger. McDonald's poured millions into commercials showing upscale imagery, much like the cinematic style baby boomers remembered from classic movies. The sandwich featured a peppered bacon strip, a tangy Dijon sauce, and a premium bun that attempted to shed the brand's kid-centric reputation. Despite heavy promotion and ephemeral references in late-night talk shows, it didn't resonate with enough people to remain. The Arch Deluxe soon became a cautionary tale in fast food marketing, frequently studied in business courses, though references to older times evoke parallels to high-profile menu flops of past decades. YouTube historians collect old promotional materials, analyzing how the campaign tried to tap into sophisticated tastes left over from that golden age of dining out. Ultimately, it vanished quickly, a testament to how a sandwich can disappear even when backed by enormous corporate might. Number 9. Wendy's Superbar Pita. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, Wendy's offered a self-serve salad bar famously called the Superbar. A lesser-known spin-off was a pita stuffed with items from the bar, including chili, shredded cheese, and various toppings. This unusual approach appealed to adventurous Gen X customers who wanted to experiment with flavors. While not heavily advertised, it became an underground favorite among Wendy's fans who discovered it by word of mouth. Nostalgia websites that compile old commercials sometimes mention glimpses of the Superbar, though the pita option rarely shows up in official print ads from that period. By the mid-1990s, the bar and its related sandwiches disappeared, possibly due to cost issues and cleanliness concerns. People who were kids at the time of the baby boomer parents recall sneaking extra toppings, constructing monstrous pita creations. The sandwich's do-it-yourself novelty might have been ahead of its time, and its abrupt discontinuation has made it something of a cult legend in fast food history. Number 10. The Mystery Club from mom-and-pop diners. In the 1940s and 1950s, small family-owned diners dotted America's highways. Many offered a rotating Mystery Club sandwich that changed ingredients daily, usually combining leftover roast turkey, ham, bacon, or whatever was available. It became a whimsical hallmark for travelers exploring old America, as waitresses in retro uniforms teased customers about the sandwich's daily secrets. Baby boomers remember the neon signs out front, the crackle of jukebox tunes, and the sense of community around the diner counter. The Mystery Club vanished with the decline of independent roadside eateries in the 1970s and 1980s, replaced by franchised establishments with standardized menus. Newspaper archives and 20th century photo albums occasionally reveal chalkboard menus boasting Mystery Club 25 cents. Contemporary food bloggers try to resurrect it by mixing unexpected fillings, but the authentic atmosphere is hard to replicate. The phenomenon remains a piece of American nostalgia, something only those from that golden age fully understand. Number 11, the Cheese Dream. Originating in the 1930s, the Cheese Dream was basically an open-faced cheese sandwich, often topped with tomato or bacon, then broiled. The concept emerged during the Depression era, when economical meals were a necessity. Its popularity skyrocketed in the 1940s, appearing in cookbooks and radio cooking shows that taught families how to whip up tasty meals with minimal resources. By the 1950s, baby boomers found this dish in school cafeterias, diners, and even at some drive-ins, complementing malt shakes and old Hollywood-inspired movie outings. As the decades went on, more sophisticated grilled cheese variations overshadowed the humble cheese dream. By the 1970s, it had largely receded from mainstream menus, living on primarily in family recipe cards and occasional references in vintage commercials, hawking cheddar cheese. Today, it exists mostly as a culinary footnote in historical discussions about frugal 20th century cooking, appealing to those who study American nostalgia or rummage through Grandma's Oldies cookbook collection. Number 12, the Gino's Giant. Gino's was a fast food chain, founded in the 1950s by several well-known football players, quickly gaining a foothold in certain parts of the East Coast. The Gino's Giant was their signature burger, loaded with lettuce, cheese, onions, and a special sauce reminiscent of other big-name sandwiches of the day. Baby boomers recall seeing Gino's commercials on TV sets with rabbit ear antennas, often featuring local sports figures giving the chain credibility. In the 1970s, it stood as a serious contender in the fast food market. Yet by the 1980s, mergers and acquisitions led to the dissolution of many Geno's locations. The Geno's giant vanished along with them. Retro forums and nostalgic YouTube channels often dig up bits of footage from old commercials, featuring jolly jingles that evoke the era's positivity. Collectors who keep mid-century memorabilia sometimes find Geno's packaging that references the giant, reminding us of a time when regional chains could compete with national giants. Though a few revival attempts have occurred, the original Geno's giant experience remains impossible to replicate in modern fast food culture. Number 13, the Big Chef from Burger Chef. Burger Chef was once a major contender in the fast food scene, especially from the 1950s through the 1970s, known for pioneering the concept of a fun meal before Happy Meals became ubiquitous. The Big Chef was their flagship sandwich, featuring 2 beef patties, a center bun, and a secret sauce that tasted more tangy than its rivals. Baby boomers still share memories of Burger Chef's bright, space-age themed commercials and playful mascots shown during old movies' intermissions in drive-in theaters. By the 1980s, the chain changed hands multiple times, and most locations either closed or converted into Hardee's. The Big Chef slipped quietly into the annals of 20th century history. Retro TV watchers and American nostalgia bloggers love to showcase battered advertisements that once promised the best burger under the bun. Today you might find a fleeting tribute item at occasional pop-up events, but the authentic Big Chef of its heyday is long gone. Gen Xers occasionally wax poetic about the taste, highlighting how it diverged from modern fast food flavors. Number 14, the McDLT. Launched by McDonald's in the mid-1980s, the McDLT came in a 2-part styrofoam container designed to keep the hot side hot and the cool side cool. It reflected a futuristic design sensibility reminiscent of 1960s and 1970s sci-fi themes, capturing the fascination of baby boomers who grew up watching technological advances shape everyday life. The sandwich itself had lettuce, tomato, cheese, pickles, onions, and a 1/4-pound beef patty, assembled by customers just before eating. Old commercials from the 1980s featured catchy jingles starring future celebrities. Environmental concerns about styrofoam packaging contributed to its demise in the early 1990s. Many Gen Xers recall the novelty of flipping one side onto the other, a memory evoking that golden era of consumer experimentation. Although McDonald's tried to preserve some elements in later products, the unique packaging and name never returned, making the McDLT a beloved relic for those who yearn for the days of cassette tapes, neon fashion, and retro rock and roll. Number 15, the Burger King Yumbo. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Burger King introduced the Yumbo, a hot ham and cheese sandwich served on a toasted hoagie roll. Many baby boomers remember ordering this alongside classic Whoppers, drawn in by whimsical advertisements that sometimes aired between variety shows and old Hollywood film broadcasts. The Yumbo was a quick departure from typical burgers, aimed at customers seeking something different. By the 1980s, the Yumbo quietly disappeared from menus, overshadowed by updated products. A brief revival occurred decades later, but it didn't permanently stick around. Collectors of 20th century American nostalgia occasionally find references to the original Yumbo in vintage newspaper ads, featuring the chain's old logo. For older adults, the taste recalls family outings to early fast food joints, complete with paper crowns and plastic seating. The Yumbo's repeated disappearances serve as a reminder that even beloved items can fade away if they no longer fit contemporary tastes or corporate strategies. Number 16, the Taco Bell Bell Beefer. During the 1970s, Taco Bell attempted a burger-like sandwich by placing seasoned ground beef, shredded lettuce, onions, and sauce on a hamburger bun. It was the Bell Beefer, reflecting a time when American fast food brands aimed to reach across menu boundaries. Baby boomers who grew up during that era recall how commercials boasted it as a fusion of burger convenience with Taco Bell's signature flavors. By the late 1980s, consumer tastes had shifted heavily toward tacos and burritos, leaving little room for a Tex-Mex burger. The Bell Beefer subsequently disappeared, though nostalgic fans occasionally launch campaigns to bring it back. Old commercials, often found in archive tapes or on YouTube, show a simpler version of Taco Bell's identity before it diversified into chalupas and quesadillas. Discussions about things only baby boomers will understand frequently include the Bell Beefer's taste, somewhere between Sloppy Joe and fast food taco. With shifting preferences and brand identity changes, the Bell Beefer stands as a prime example of a menu item that once intrigued the public, but ultimately vanished. Number 17, the Jack in the Box Frings Philly. In the early 2000s, Jack in the Box tested a sandwich that combined Philly cheese steak elements with onion frings, a mix of fries and onion rings, tucked inside. Although not as deeply rooted in the 20th century as some others, it carried the spirit of fast food experimentation reminiscent of the 1970s. Gen Xers who were fans of bold flavors recall late-night cravings for this messy, cheese-laden item. It never received huge marketing pushes. A few local commercials played, sometimes referencing that retro diner vibe or the rebellious attitude that baby boomers once associated with drive-in burger joints. Sales didn't meet expectations, and the chain discontinued the concept after a limited regional run. Online message boards still discuss sightings of promotional posters featuring a stylized city skyline and a neon sign calling it the Frings Philly. This ephemeral sandwich exemplifies how quickly innovative ideas can appear and vanish, leaving behind only faint memories and the occasional mention in retro-themed threads. Number 18, the Pizza Hut Priazzo. Though labeled a pie, many considered the Priazzo a sandwich-like deep dish creation with layered ingredients in the 1980s. Pizza Hut introduced it as an upscale offering, heavily featured in old commercials that pictured family gatherings and a taste of old-world Italy. Baby boomers recall seeing the Priazzo as something exotic compared to standard pizza fare, often paired with table service restaurants reminiscent of earlier 20th century dining experiences. While technically a pizza, its stuffed approach made it feel like a sandwich pie hybrid. The product proved complicated to prepare, slowing kitchen operations. Despite early success, it disappeared within a few years. Nostalgia-seeking YouTubers review the original ads, showing waitstaff wearing 1980s uniforms that evoke vintage memories. The Priazzo's ambitious concept and short lifespan turned it into a cult favorite among Gen Xers who recall tasting it during visits with their grandparents. It remains one of those vanished items that occasionally resurfaces in online recipe attempts, but the authentic version from the chain's heyday is no longer available. Number 19, the Arby's Big Montana. Arby's gained recognition for roast beef sandwiches in the 1970s and 1980s. The Big Montana arrived a bit later as a massive portion of roast beef, appealing to hearty appetites and those nostalgic for the supersized mentality of earlier decades. Old America embraced the idea of more being better, a sentiment carried over from the baby boomer generation. The Big Montana exemplified that concept, frequently mentioned in local radio commercials featuring Western-themed jingles. Eventually, changing health trends and revised portion standards made the overstuffed sandwich less appealing to modern consumers, leading to its removal. Collectors of restaurant memorabilia who comb through archived menus can spot references to the Big Montana's enormous serving size. Some fans compare it to the monstrous diner servings of the 1950s, recalling greasy spoons and classic road trips. Nowadays, Arby's offers alternative large sandwiches, but the original Big Montana name and format have receded into fast food history, only occasionally conjured in nostalgic conversations. Number 20, the Sonic Pickle O. In the 1960s, Sonic Drive-In served a fried pickle slice sandwich called the Pickle O. Reminiscent of the era's fascination with everything battered and fried, it was a novelty item that appealed to adventurous eaters among baby boomers who enjoyed cruising into the drive-in ordering from a speaker box, and having car hops deliver the food. Old commercials sometimes spotlighted playful challenges like, "Try our piccolo if you dare," capturing the rebellious spirit of that golden age of rock and roll. By the 1970s and 1980s, more mainstream burger items took precedence, and the piccolo quietly disappeared. Vintage menu collectors occasionally stumble upon Sonic adverts featuring cartoon pickles proclaiming crispy, tangy delight. Although fried pickles remain popular appetizers in some regions, the original piccolo sandwich format hasn't returned to Sonic. Memories from that period often revolve around poodle skirts, neon signage, and black and white film nights, all of which enhance the mystique of this lost item. It's a reminder that culinary innovation in 20th century America sometimes ventured into peculiar territory that, in this case, remains firmly in the past,